I wearing fatigues? Boom. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's a joy to be with you today. We've got a lot going on as we are a month away from the election, please go to vote.org. This is the last day that you will be able to get registered in states that do not have same day on site voter registration. But what you need to do more than anything is go to vote.org right now and find out if you are still on the rolls. Even if you registered last week, you got to make sure that you've not been purged this week. So please go to vote.org. And if you, for some reason, are not on the polls, on the voter rolls, what you do is click another link on vote.org, and then you will be able to re-register. And you'll be able to vote November 5th, 2024. So please get on over there and vote, and bring your friends, get your friends to vote. And there's early voting that has already started. So you can also go to vote.org, or you can go to the Transformative Justice Coalition's website, Rainbow Push's website, and find out if early voting has started in your state. If it has, we urge you to go and do that. Please, if you have trouble at the polls, please call 1-866-OUR-VOTE, 1-866-OUR-VOTE, and do not leave the polling place until you have voted. Do not leave the polling place until you have voted. When you call 1-866-OUR-VOTE, there are lawyers on standby who will help you to work through whatever issues you have at the polls. Whatever issues you might be visually impaired. You might need to have someone come into the polling booth with you. You might English might be your second or third language, or you might not be a master of the American English language, like most people are not. So don't even be ashamed. You might not be able to make everything out. I don't know, but you do have rights. You are able to bring people in with you to assist you. Not to vote for you, but to assist you in the vote. So please go to 866-OUR-VOTE if you have any problems at the polls. Please go to the Santita Jackson and Friends page on Facebook. We're streaming there. And go to the Santita Jackson Show. Please like and subscribe on YouTube. Hey, Carol, my sister from another Mr. Hey, Kenneth, how you doing? Sending you so much love today. Everybody, thumbs up. I need you to like the show. Like and share the show. Please do that. Right away. And then I've given you a whole list of things. I am on X at Santita J. So meet me over there as well. Hey. So please, everybody, we've got a lot to talk about. Can you believe it's been a year since October 7th, 2023? It's hard to fathom. So much has happened in that year, in that part of the world and all around the world, and certainly in our country. And indeed, that event has the power to turn this election. Yeah, many people, that is, if not the overriding issue, for some people it is. It is an issue of such import that it will sway the election, as will the economy. I mean, but this particular event, it's a seminal event. It's an iconic event in which more than 1,200 Israelis were killed at festivals. Hamas killed these people, and this is a horrible thing. But as time has gone on, we have found out that even that day was much more complex, Jonah Karsham, if not now, than we thought. Ariel Gold, Fellowship of Reconciliation. A lot of other things happened. We found there was a lot of friendly fire. We have hostages that are still being kept by Hamas, and tens of thousands. According to the Lancet study, more than 5 weeks ago, they said more than 186,000 Palestinians have been killed by the IDF. They estimate that 500,000 will be killed by the time this conflict is over. But that's a number that is uncertain because we don't know when the conflict will end. We're wondering if it will end. Everybody, thumbs up. Please like the show. And I want to know let's look back and let's be here today and let's look forward. Because uncommitted, those delegates, they are saying I'm not going to vote for the Democratic ticket. More and more of them are saying that. There's that. Then there was, we have seen a Palestinian presence on the national stage that, quite frankly, we've not seen before. And yet they were still excluded from the main stage at the Democratic convention. And that was noted by a lot of activists. And so, how will this impact the election? And just going forward, how will it impact students who are looking at having their freedom of speech shut down? There are just so many layers to this, Jonah Karsh. And I'd like to start with you, Ariel Gold, my sister beloved, and you have to be my son because you are young enough to be that. I know he's like, what? I don't have a problem with it because Ariel and I are women of a certain age. We are very happy about that. We are not ashamed of the gospel, buddy. We are very, very happy about that. But Jonah Karsh, October 7th, where were you when you found out about it? Because we all woke up and it seems like Ariel Gold, that day was a whole game changer.
Yeah.
October 7th and then October 8th. And by the end of the week, the story wasn't quite, it had played out very differently. And then it just continued. It continues to play out very differently. Jonah Karsh, where were you when you found this out? What was your initial reaction? And just take us through October 7th for you and that moment in time.
Well, I was actually in Minnesota, in St. Paul, visiting my brother, who attends McAllister College there with my family, sleeping in his room in the house he was living in. I think he's still living there, and woke up on Saturday morning and slept in because it was a Saturday morning, and looked over at my phone and saw a New York Times alert about what had happened, and my initial feeling was just, heartbreak and dread. Oh my goodness, this is awful to see so many people be slaughtered. It was unclear at that point even the full magnitude of it, and it became clear in the days following, just how many people were affected. The first thing I wanted to do was check on my family that lives in Israel and see that they were okay. Their lives changed as a result of this. And I also, as somebody who has spent time in the West Bank, who has devoted myself to fighting against Israel's apartheid system and occupation, had this immense dread of, I kind of felt like I knew what was coming.
What do you
mean? Well, when I visited the West Bank, one of the things that one of the activists told me, a Palestinian in the Masafer Yatta region, constantly under threat of demolition, right next to Israeli settlements, really apartheid up close in a way that you really can't see anywhere else. He said, if you speak out against the occupation publicly, you will be punished. And he was not exaggerating. I then later in that trip went to a nonviolent protest, and I think I've told you about this before, but we were protesting a roadblock that Israeli settlers had put up that was blocking Palestinian children from getting to school. Israel's own Supreme Court had said that roadblock was illegal. The settlers continued to erect it, and the army would not do anything to change that. So we went to symbolically try to move the boulders, even though we weren't really strong enough to do so. We didn't have any bulldozers or anything like that. We showed up, we were chanting. And as I've said, I've been to more militant protests in my hometown of Evanston, Illinois. It was really not much. And the army showed up within 5 minutes, gave an order to disperse, started shoving people, started throwing stun grenades, which are louder than a jet engine, the loudest as I've ever heard, so loud that you don't even realize how loud they are. And tear gas was deployed as well. Thankfully, I was out of the way by that point, but it was shocking and horrifying, and I sort of had a panic attack. And it underlined for me, yes, you will be punished if you speak out against the occupation. And we're talking about nonviolent resistance. And I will not for a moment justify the actions of Hamas on October 7th. They were war crimes. They're not justifiable. I think they also to explain is not to justify. And I don't think that a movement like Hamas would exist without 75 years of Israeli apartheid, of a system, of a state that was founded on the displacement of Palestinian people that continues their oppression to this day. And so if that was the way that Israel was going to respond to a nonviolent protest, how are they going to respond to war crimes and to a terrorist attack? And the answer was, I could see that it was going to be really, really awful. I don't think I saw that it would be quite this awful, but I do remember starting to feel a really immense amount of dread the following day when the defense minister used the phrase human animals to describe the Palestinians in Gaza. He said, "We are fighting human animals and we are acting accordingly." And he said that alongside an announcement that he would be cutting off water, food, and electricity and fuel to Gaza, which made it clear he was not just talking about Hamas, but about a campaign of collective punishment of the population, and a campaign, as I learned in my Holocaust education, as soon as you start using language that dehumanizes people, that calls them animals. And that is a real red light warning sign that there might be something genocidal that's about to happen. And thankfully for the education that I received, I knew that. And I was horrified. And unfortunately, that is what happened. But I really sprung into action to try to prevent that, because as sad as I was, I didn't feel like I even had time to grieve as much as I needed to and wanted to. I knew that the lives of my family that were changed by this, the lives that I just wanted 7 days to sit Shiva, as we would do in the Jewish tradition, I knew the best way I could sit Shiva and mourn them was to prevent their lives and memories of those who had died from being desecrated by a genocide. And unfortunately, we weren't able to prevent it. It's still going on. It's expanding. But I can't do anything but continue to fight.
Well, two questions for you,
Yeah.
because any number of Israeli officials have referred to the Palestinians as animals. Where does that come from? Because we've heard it so frequently that it's been very unsettling. Where does that come from?
Yeah, I think I don't know exactly. Clearly from a deep-seated racism. I think an important lens through which to understand the state of Israel is the Holocaust. It is a huge part of the way the state conceives of itself. And it was a horrible event. I mean, imagine a genocide that killed 6 million people. The Jewish population worldwide has only, I believe, in the last few years reached what it was prior to the Holocaust. So it was a devastating series of events, genocide, whatever you want to call it. And some people took the lesson from that we didn't have the guns. That was the reason it happened. We need to make sure that never happens again. Not never again for anyone, but never again for us. And the solution is brute force. And anyone who stand in the way of that is part of the problem. And in some ways, that can lead to further dehumanization. And I think that's what we're seeing with that kind of rhetoric about human animals.
Well, when you don't process your own lessons, you repeat them, right? I mean, that's just a very human thing. So, I mean, it's not particular to these Israelis. It's human, Abused people become abusive if they haven't processed the lessons. But you are a young man, and I know Ariel can relate to me on this. Well, because I was looking at my birth certificate. And I was born in a colored women's hospital. And then, Joda's looking at me like, huh? But I was. And I was watching Ta-Nehisi Coates, who has a new book out that deals in part with the Middle East. And he was describing himself as a child of Jim Crow. And I said, I guess I am too. I was born in Jim Crow. Yeah, when I was born, they had not passed the Voting Rights Act. So my parents were fighting to use the public library. My parents were fighting to vote. This all happened did I see it? No, I was an infant. I was a newborn. Please, I was in utero, for heaven's sake. But I'm a child of that. Um, how, and so it comes to me, my question for you is did you, how do you understand apartheid? I mean, because you're like, no, this is what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing described, and when I've gone there, because you talked to me and you've been on this show and you've talked about your experiences um, in Israel and in Palestine. And you're like, no, this is apartheid. I mean, help me with that. Because I'm saying Jim Crow uh, and of course I'm coming through a desegregation era. So, my mother said, you've had a life that your father and I didn't have. You have white friends from kindergarten. When you all see each other, it's like, remember Mrs. Davies, remember Mrs. Smith, remember? She said, I don't have that experience. And you are much further out than I. And yet you come back and you're like, no, what I'm seeing is akin to what South Africans lived under. How did you arrive at that conclusion?
Well, certainly seeing it up close was I would say confirmatory evidence for me. But I have to give credit to Palestinians who had been saying it for years, and to human rights organizations who took the time to really do an analysis of this and understand what it is that's going on. It's not a position that I always held.
Mm-hmm.
I used to, there was a sort of belief that, well, what you could argue that what's going on in the West Bank is apartheid, but if there's a two-state solution and the West Bank becomes part of a Palestinian state, then you get rid of that issue, and it's only ever on the edge of becoming apartheid, and it's not all the way there. And over time, I began to understand the occupation as something that was meant to be permanent, at least until right wingers got into power and could even potentially remove enough Palestinians from the West Bank that they could annex the whole thing. But the real thing is to see up close, particularly in the West Bank. But groups like Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, and the Israeli human rights group B'Tselem have done a great job of analyzing how this is actually part of a regime of Jewish supremacy over Palestinians. And there are differences in severity and degree, but not in kind. And that exists not just in the West Bank, but in Gaza, in Jerusalem, in East Jerusalem, and in Israel, the state of Israel itself, where even though Palestinian citizens of Israel do have citizenship, do have the right to vote, they're in mostly separate schools, they receive unequal funding. In the West Bank, what you will see is streets that Jews are allowed to walk on and Palestinians are not allowed to walk on. What you will see in the village of Al Khair, which I visited in the West Bank, is a settlement that was built on land stolen from the village, just up the hill from the village, a 1.5 minute walk. That village is hooked up to Israeli electricity system, Israeli running water, and all the utilities and amenities of the state. It has the protection of the army. It's incredibly built out. And everyone there is an Israeli citizen who has the right to vote for the government that controls their lives. The Palestinians, 2-minute walk away down the hill, have solar-powered electricity that was donated by international aid organizations that often doesn't work. They have to pay many times more in money for the water that they do receive, which they have to buy in tanks and bring to the village on a weekly basis. And they live in tents, and they can't get permits to build much more than some tents and huts and more simple structures. It'll probably be demolished. That is kind of as stark as you can see it. And again, who's controlling their lives? The Israeli government. And can they vote for that government? No. So two people, one Jewish, one Palestinian, right next to each other, living under completely different regimes. That's the starkest way you'll see it, is right there in the West Bank. But what these human rights groups have analyzed also is that that you may see it most starkly there, but the system of inequality as a state policy between Jews and Palestinians exists everywhere that is under Israeli control in different ways.
We're talking with Jonah Karshif, if not now, Chicago. a group of young Jewish activists. Of course, we've seen Jewish Voice for Peace. Well, this is uh, these are the young ones, the young guns. And they have done such magnificent work, really. Uh, Not only telling the story of what's happening there, what's been so impressive to me about, if not now, is the fact that you are in coalition with so many other groups. Why have you all found it important to be in coalition with, I mean, if I want to find the young black, brown, Palestinian, goodness, activists of every background, all I need to do is call you or Aaron Niederman, my sweetie who's overseas right now. We love you. We love you, Aaron. I had to say that. I had to say it because it's my sweetie. Bless his heart. Well, we want him to go on and learn everything he needs to learn and hurry up and get home. But that's all right. But talk to me. I mean, what is it? Why have you felt that that it was important for you to be in coalition with so many people?
Well, there are a couple reasons. One reason is that if you're trying to fight against American support for a regime of apartheid, a regime that says that Jews and Palestinians are separate and that one is better than the other, you want to be the change that you wish to see in the world. The world that we're fighting for is one of cross race, cross class, cross religion, coalition building, and unity and liberation collectively for everyone. That's the kind of world we want to build. So how could I be saying that I'm here to liberate you without even talking to you? So that's number one. And number two is we want to win. We want to win that world. We're a small group. I mean, we're getting bigger, thankfully. We've had a lot of growth in the last year, but we're one organization. We're a group of nerdy Jews. We can't win this by ourselves. We've tried. Trust me. We can't get every member of Congress to do what we want on our own. We can't change U.S. policy on our own. It's going to take the progressive movement and more coming together to do that. And we want to be in those coalitions that are making that happen. So we understand our success is dependent not on the strength of us alone, but on the strength of our coalitions.
Well, going forward, I mean, where do you want to go? Because we've seen, oh my goodness, so many Palestinians have been killed. I mean, it really is a genocide. And it's been painful to watch. It's painful to watch the pain on all sides. It's painful to watch the families who are begging Prime Minister Netanyahu, would you please negotiate and bring my family home? And they just keep popping up dead, sometimes killed by the IDF, waving white flags of surrender. I mean, what? And with changing Netanyahu, with doing a change out, would that change anything? It might change some things, but help me. It seems like we're locked into. It's not an endless cycle. Somebody's got to stop.
Yeah,
right.
I think at this point the opposition parties to Netanyahu, as I understand it, are not as a matter of sympathy for Palestinians or Arabs around the Middle East, but as a matter of what they think is best for the long-term success of the state of Israel and for getting the hostages home. Some of them are not fans of the expansion into Lebanon. Some of them would like to see a hostage deal sooner rather than later. Now, so I think if Netanyahu left power, there would be a better chance of that happening. Would there be a better chance of ending apartheid? I think absolutely not. The state ideology, and that goes basically for every party in the state that does not include Palestinians in it, is one of to continue Israel's apartheid system in some form or fashion. The rhetoric they use, the severity might seem less or more palatable to the American ear, but I think the fundamental project of continuing Israel as a Jewish state, which I think unfortunately inherently, by the way it was founded, means that is at the expense of Palestinians. That is something that every Jewish party in Israeli politics wants to continue. They're not looking for a shared society of equality.
Well,
You know,
and then of course Ariel Gold, the money too. I mean, there's just so many moving parts here. It's
yeah,
supposed to be a beachfront. I mean, I'm not laughing at it. It is just the absurdity of it all,
you know,
and yet, I mean, so many. There's so much pain. I mean,
Benny Gantz has an op-ed in the New York Times today. Benny Gantz is considered the moderate, the alternative to Netanyahu, and I think the op-ed is titled something like "What You Need to Know About Iran," and it's an argument to Iran to bomb Iran's nuclear sites.
Mhm.
And it doesn't. That's no different. It's totally warmongering, and that is the opposition. I agree. You might get a lighter, softer. You might get lighter, softer language, and
Mhm.
kind of a different approach to the same apartheid. And at this point, the the genocide that started a year ago has gotten so far and gained so much momentum that I think really the vast majority of Israeli society is well on board. When Netanyahu expanded from Gaza to Lebanon, which was the complete end of any discussion, any pretending that there was concern for the hostages. When that happened, his approval ratings shot up enormously, and he strengthened his coalition in the government. So
Is
we're
it?
in a really dark time, and I've been aware of these last couple hours. A few hours ago, I saw a notification that Iran has, as of 2 o'clock today, until the end of today, so right at the start of October 7th over there, has closed all of its airports. And I don't know if that's in anticipation of an Israeli attack or they're planning something, but I know that I am nervous and afraid, and
Well, particularly Ariel,
what
because they said that we will feel this over here,
I'm
and
sure
I mean,
we will.
and I'm
I'm
not saying
sure
that
we will.
that's not the only reason that I feel awful about this. You just hate to see this kind of pain. I mean, when I look at what's happening in Haiti,
Of
I'm
course, I hate
I mean,
to see it anywhere, but yeah, we're talking over here too. And you know, Jonah was talking about. I had so much of a similar response to October 7th a year ago. I, had different stages of realizing the severity of what Hamas had done, and as I realized that severity more and more, I went through like simultaneously grief over that and just terrified of knowing what was to come. Because as each kind of report of the severity came through, I thought, the people of Gaza, oh my God, oh my God. And I still couldn't conceive that it would be this. I remember thinking this is going to be as bad as 2014, when 1,400 were killed in that war. Then thinking, oh gosh, it's going to be worse than 2014. But I didn't conceive of this. And, Jonah was talking about, and so much, that after the Holocaust, right, there was this idea that Jewish safety, we could have been saved, and that Jewish safety would now depend on force, and it's the opposite, right? There is no amount of bombs and walls and guns and stun grenades and tear gas canisters that will make Jews safe. In fact, it is making Israelis, it will make Israelis safe. It is making Israelis less safe by the moment. I watched this, and when I saw Iran's recent attack, and I just burst out crying, kind of unexpectedly. Really thinking this was a major, they were going to hit, the missiles were going to hit, and it was going to escalate from there. But Israel's a really tiny place. This sense of security that they feel, that's temporary. There is no way, right? It's just a clicking time bomb, right? A ticking clock. And I fear what's going to happen to the Israeli people. And of course, I am just devastated at what's happening to the Palestinian people and the Lebanese people and the Yemeni people. But none of this bodes well for Israel. This idea of de-escalation as a result of escalation is such a false promise. And it was a false promise as well when Hamas tried to do that on October 7th, right? And I know I had some friends who felt like who celebrated it as kind of liberatory, and not me. There's no going up against Israel's military might, backed by the United States military might. Escalation does not bring de-escalation. It brings death and destruction and more hatred and more dehumanization. And I don't see an end in sight. And yeah, it's honestly, I have to stretch pretty far these days to feel any type of optimism or hope.
Well, I'm going to keep hope alive. I'm going to do that because I do know that at the end of the day, just given my own faith base, God has won. The question is, at the end of days, will God say, you were on my side? I don't need God on my side. I want to be on God's side. And there's a way lions and lambs have to lie down together. The Bible tells us that you have a place at the table in the presence of your enemy, because enemy is God's child too. Your enemy is God's child too. So we have to find a way. We're always locked into, the Israelis and the Palestinians are locked into each other. It's like the War of the Roses, you guys. I mean, it's just life. You're always locked in with your opposite or with the person with whom you have the most conflict. It's the human story. And that's just something we have to learn from. I mean, Jonah, just moving forward, where do you see this? How do you see this impacting the election? I mean, I don't want to sound crass, Ariel, because I mean, but this is a big issue in the election. I mean, it's like every few days I'm watching uncommitted groups who are saying I can't support Kamala Harris. Wow. I mean, where do you see this going, Jonah Karsh, with the election? Or do you
Yeah,
or
well,
does it matter?
No, I'm sure it matters. I mean, let me start by saying also, I think I stand corrected. I had seen Benny Gantz shortly after the attacks in Lebanon go on TV criticizing Netanyahu in Hebrew and saying this is not going to bring the hostages home. But it seems maybe as he read the tea leaves and saw where the public was at, that he has now gone back to the warmongering camp, which no surprise there. But so I was too optimistic about the opposition. In terms of the election, I want to point something out. We're talking about our lack of hope and the despair that the continuation of this has caused and the expansion of this has caused. It doesn't have to be this way. And one of the things that we're really, really trying to nail down is that, and we still believe it really, is that Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, the president of the United States, can end this with a phone call. We still believe that. And what it takes, people say, wait, really? Then why haven't they done it? Well, what it requires is a threat, a credible threat, to take away the weapons from Israel that are being used to perpetrate this genocide and this war. We've seen historical precedent 3 or 4 times of American presidents calling up the Prime Minister of Israel, making threats to that effect, and every single time Israel backing off and conceding. And we have quotes of Israeli officials saying, yeah, we can't do this without the U.S. support. If they dictate to us that the stern phone calls, the I'm disappointed in Netanyahu, they don't care about that. They do care about whether the weapons continue to flow. And that's all that the uncommitted movement has been asking for. Stop sending the bombs that are killing our families. And by the way, I think the uncommitted movement has been such a model of shared humanity. There was a moment that I keep thinking about at the convention where they did a sit-in after the Democratic Party and Kamala Harris, I think, made the grave mistake of refusing to include a Palestinian speaker. They did a sit-in outside the United Center. They were conducting their action, and someone walked by and yelled, "Bring them home." And they said, "We agree." you know, they understand the project of Palestinian liberation as part of a project of shared humanity.
Mhm.
They understand that the bombs coming from Israel are not good for the hostages or for the Palestinians.
Mhm.
Um, and they've done everything right, in my opinion, politically. They've tried to bring out an olive branch to Harris. They've tried to get a meeting with her. They've talked to her outside a rally, and she said, "Oh yeah, let's meet." They asked for a speaker. They've done everything right. They're looking they because they understand the fascist threat of Trump. They're looking for reasons to get behind the ticket, and unfortunately, the Harris campaign seems to have decided not to entertain that possibility. They've seemed to decided, and maybe things will change after the election if she's elected, but they seem to have made the decision not to rock the boat on the Israel issue, defend Biden's actions, and play to the center rather than the left. And there are a lot of Arab American voters in Michigan. And by the way, Dearborn, Michigan is not a majority. The Arab American population there is not mostly Palestinian. It's Lebanese. And
Mhm.
with the escalation in Lebanon, that is only, I think, making people more dug into, I can't support the administration that is doing this. I hope that more and more people understand the severity of Trump, understand that things unfortunately can get worse, and cast a vote to fight fascism, not necessarily a vote in favor of what the policies of the next administration would be, but in favor of making it worse. But it's really, really hard to make that case to people when the administration is bombing your family and not even meeting with the people that are asking them to stop. So unfortunately, you know, the polling from our friend Jim Zogby shows that Jill Stein and Donald Trump are doing as well or better than than Kamala Harris in the state of Michigan. That's really scary. I don't want, you know, again, I don't want to see Trump win. I know how I'm voting, but I don't know how to tell somebody who's seen their family bombed to death that to vote for the administration that's been facilitating that without any promise of policy change or even a fig leaf or an olive branch or something, you know. So
Well, it is very, very painful. I know that you've got to leave. In fact, tomorrow evening in Chicago, or should I say by the time this is broadcast this evening in Chicago, what is happening?
yeah, if not now, my organization and chapters all over the country, as an intervention in what we fear will be a very reactionary response from parts of the mainstream Jewish community to the 1 year anniversary of October 7th, is holding a series of vigil public mourning events around the country called Every Life a Universe, because the point being that every single life lost is a universe, which is a idea that comes directly out of Jewish tradition. And not only that every single life is a universe, but that to understand that fully means that you also have to reckon with power and balance. That
Mhm.
every life is a universe. We mourn every single life lost, and we also think about what got us here. Our country sending bombs to an apartheid state is what got us here, and allowing that to continue. And we're going to talk about that as we hold the humanity of everyone, because we really truly believe that the system serves nobody and that we need to change it. So I invite Jews, non-Jews, allies. We're going to have Palestinian speakers, Jewish speakers. Now Santita will be there as well at the AIDS Garden on the lakefront in Chicago. Near Belmont Harbor at 7 p.m. tomorrow night. Every Life a Universe event with If Not Now Chicago.
I think we've all adopted Jonah. Carol Soskin, my sister from another mister out there in the hills of Beverly, said, "I love Jonah. Thank you." We've all did. We just love this young man. We love this baby. He's just such a baby. And but you're fighting the good fight. And I mean, in Ariel, when I see Jonah and when I see so many of these wonderful young people I've met, and if not now, and I have to thank Norman Solomon for connecting us. He said, "Oh, Medea and I, well, we're the old folks in this thing," and though I still don't believe that, he said, "But I want you to meet the young people, and you have become lights in my life, and I just want you to know that I love you, and of course I support you. I just had to make sure I was going to be in town, so you wouldn't zoom me in on at this event. I mean, how crass would that be? It would have been horrible." So I said, no, because I've got to leave and then I'm going to come back so I can be with you tomorrow. And I will be wherever it is. I'm going to look for a clump of people and I'll be there. How about that?
Thank you so much. Yeah, we've been playing phone tag for the last couple of weeks, but I'm And all
it's been a tough moment
back
for
at
us.
you. Yeah.
But of course, I absolutely support you, and I thank God for you and for what you're doing. I'm
Thank you
sending
for
you.
having me, and I
Thank
love
you.
you.
We'll be out in New York too.
All right, now, come on,
Same-
Ariel.
different people, same community,
That's right. That's right. I
different
mean,
religion, same people.
well, what can you say tomorrow? I mean, I like, what is the takeaway tomorrow? I mean, because it seems like so much is unresolved.
We need to mourn all of the lives that are lost. October 7th was a tragedy, and it was a vile tragedy that led to a genocide. And we haven't yet stopped that genocide, right? Before we can actually mourn, excuse me for DC noises outside here, but before we can really get to, as Jonah said, sitting Shiva, like how do we sit Shiva until the bleeding stops? Right? They are, last night was the heaviest night of bombing on Beirut. I guess shock and awe, just inconceivable. And we know the plans for Gaza. They're doing a different type of evacuation than they've done before. Before it was like a move people. This is a permanent remove all of the people from the north of Gaza. And then we know how that goes. So first they clear all the people, then they'll declare it barren land, closed military zone. They'll get every last person out, whether by forcing them to flee or by killing them. And then it'll sit for a little bit. And then the settlers will make a first incursion. And the government will say, oh, no, you couldn't go. And they'll leave. And then they'll come back and they'll say, oh, there'll be a little back and forth. And then we'll have legal settlements. And that's, those are the acts in the play of annexation that we have seen Israel do before. Who would have thought? I mean, it's that we would be watching a second Nakba with the most high-tech weapons taking place in real time on our phones. It's been a year now. So I'm glad that we're coming together tomorrow. I agree with Jonah. We're going to see a lot of, we use the term so much during the Iraq War, the manufacturing of consent. Not that the consent is already there, but that's what tomorrow's going to be. I spent Rosh Hashanah because it's important to me to be with family. So going to shul with my family, and it was, kind of your average American conservative synagogue. And the rabbi it surprised me. It was so dishonest and such warmongering, right? It was in a nutshell, the sermon was that the Palestinians have hated us since the beginning of time. The Jews have never done anything wrong ever, and they're only trying to kill us because we're Jews and we pray different than them, and so we've got to kill them with our weapons. Please send money to the state of Israel. I mean, that was like and that's just a prelude. That's a preview of what tomorrow is going to be, not just in the American Jewish community across the US, but the Christian Zionist evangelical community as well. And I think, for me tomorrow, it's like, or today, will be today, tomorrow, holding space to know that this is not our Judaism, right? That we see a different way of faith, that we want to, as you said, Santita, we want to be godlike. We want to be in alignment, in an actual covenant with God. And we know that means recognizing that all of us are the same. All of our humanity is the same, and all of our lives matter. And that we must choose life, right? This holiday season. So, I think we'll be out to say we choose life.
We still have a month before the election, but while I look at November 5th, everyone, Jonah and Ariel, I'm concerned about November the 6th and December when the election is ratified. My mother wisely said, we have to be prayerful and careful because no matter what, on November 6th, half of the country is going to be so angry. And some of that is being driven by this. But now you've got the catastrophe in Appalachia and North Carolina and on the East Coast where they have yet another hurricane coming, we have the second worst hurricane since Katrina, and they can't get any help from the government. And then the next line is, look at all the money we're giving to Ukraine and Israel. And you're seeing this narrative that, quite frankly, it was a narrative that you needed to have in the aftermath of the Second World War, where you saw the Jewish community, they got such tremendous love and understanding and care from the world, just because of the horror. My grandfather and his fellow black soldiers were sent into the camps. Because if you sent the white soldiers from the United States into the camps, the survivors would have thought that they were Nazis, and they knew that the black soldiers were not Nazis. The other piece that they don't tell you is that the Nazis had put landmines all over the camps, so that if you wanted to go rescue these people, they were going to blow people up, and they blew up a lot of black soldiers. And they still have the landmines there today. They couldn't possibly get them all. It's a horror. But but what's the path forward? As you see it, Jonah, I've heard you say on the show, the world that you all have lived in is unacceptable to me. And Ariel, I've got to appreciate that, because you've only known war, but you also knew a black president. It's no, for you, it's like, okay, we're gonna have a woman on the ticket, we're gonna have a black man, black family in the White House. We have Jewish guys at the Naval Conservatory, which is where the vice president lives. That's her husband. Okay, it's like, you're like, okay, and so what? Who cares? Now, for people like Ariel and I, we're like, that's a lot of progress. You're like, well, I don't care. Because you all live another kind of life. You do. You do. Interracial relationships, interreligious relationships, that's not a thing to your generation. It's just how you live. What's next, Jonah? Because we've got this election, and we've got to live beyond the election. There's a lot of work to be done. What's next?
Well, I do care, and I would be wrong. I would be dishonest to not appreciate the ancestors whose shoulders I stand on, who got us to the point where I can sort of roll my eyes at the fact that we had a black president, all of that, in a country that enslaved black people for centuries. So that is not a small thing, and the fighting and the work that it took is actually the kind of inspiration that I draw as I try to move forward towards something else new around the world. Where I've heard the great Peter Beinart talk about Israelis that he has met who are active in the anti-occupation fight, and they said, I feel like I'm an abolitionist in 1820. As if to say, I see the world that we need to have, and I know it's not there yet, and I know that my society isn't there yet, but I know that I can see how we're gonna get there. And I think that, the hope for me is that systems of oppression, systems of apartheid are unstable inherently. They can't last forever, because I really do believe that people won't stand for it. The people that are being oppressed will resist the system, and you can't put yourself in a glass house forever. Eventually, people will start to throw stones.
Yeah.
And I hope that they do so non-violently, but they will. And so the path forward. I see a comment in the chat: one person, one vote. From the river to the sea. I think that's exactly right. We need a future of equality and democracy for everyone, and that's in this country too. In this country, we still don't really have a democracy. We still have a racial wealth gap that is, so persistent, that is the root of the of the lack of equality of opportunity and systemic racism in this country. We have a climate crisis. I could name the laundry list of things, but the way forward is shared humanity. I mean, I think it's possible. And if every policy decision that was made was approached from the perspective of those with the least, and understanding that we need to view the shared humanity of everybody, then I think we'd be a lot better off. And unfortunately, somewhere along the way, those things that we learned in kindergarten, like treat others as you want to be treated, and all those things, get lost in the politics. And now we have to create a politics of kindergarten ethics. I think that's all I want to see, right?
Thank you, Ellen Bloom. All you ever needed to know, you learned in kindergarten.
Right.
Yeah, I'm old enough to have read that book. Ariel Golden. It's a magnificent book because those basic lessons that your mother, your father, and your loved ones in your community taught you as you were growing up, they hold true today. Ariel, I'm going to give you the closing thought as Fellowship of Reconciliation, as you're bringing us together here.
Well, I'm in Washington right now with Fellowship of Reconciliation. We just had a one-day summit on gun violence, and I'm here with my dear friend, Reverend Fahed Abu Akal, who was born in the Galilee and went on to become the first Arab American, the first Palestinian American to lead Presbyterian Church USA. Maybe Fahed will come and peek a little hello. But we have a really close friendship, and I got to hear him preach today at a church, and hear his generosity. He came to the U.S. the first time, like shocked that you could travel places without a permit to go from like state to state, having grown up when Israel proper inside the Green Line was an apartheid, was that formal apartheid state. And yet his generosity of love for the Jewish people who he grew up oppressed by is a constant reminder to me that that it is our relationships and that it is our shared liberation that we are struggling towards together. And I'm grateful to be in community and in this struggle with both of you, Santita and Jonah. And I'm going to double down on you, Santita, about that hope with the younger generation. My daughter's 21, and she's out at the protests and just joined a Bund. A group of Bundist Jews at her university. And I think of how isolated I was when I started doing that as a Jewish American, and that isn't the community that she faces, right? There are so many more Jews, so many more Jewish groups, like if not now, and so many others, in this struggle together, that she immediately has community to be with as she grows her political wings. So may we get there sooner. And in terms of this election, I want to say as well, it's so hard to make the case for Kamala right now. She's not making it easy for us, right? She is not making it easy. Letting a Palestinian speaker on the stage was all we asked for, was a bone, right? It was such a small ask from uncommitted. But, Donald Trump said, I forget if it was yesterday or the day before, but he said, bomb those nuclear sites in Iran. Get the job finished. So we have to recognize, even if that's your primary issue, we have to do everything we can to remind people that we need to vote for the candidate that we want to protest, because Harris isn't going to give us liberation of Palestine. It's our work.
No one's going to give it to you. You're going to have to fight for it, right?
It's our work to do, and that work's going to be easier under a Harris administration with our allies in Congress and the allies that we will have in that administration than it would be under a fascist Trump administration. So I know I'm not on behalf of Fellowship of Reconciliation, because we're a 501c3 and we don't take positions on the election. But I myself know who I'm voting for, and encouraging folks to remember to be strategic on as we cast our ballots and think towards the future that way. We've got a long ways to go, but we've come a long ways already.
But you know what? Everybody get out and vote, please. I've made my choice, but what I want you to do more than anything, is to participate in this project. Because when you don't vote, you voted, and there's a lot of work to be done. And we have, believe it or not, we've come a mighty long way. We just have a much, much, much longer way to travel, and that's okay. In fact, that's fair. That's just. It's all right. We have to do our work too, right? And so I'm not worried about that. I believe when I see Jonah and I see all of the young people that I have met, um, I feel very good. I feel heartened by the fact that you all are maturing and you're moving forward. So no matter what, I think you all are on the right track. So let's just keep this going, and I'll see you tomorrow night. How about that? Next hour, let's talk about the vote. Everybody, vote.org. Please find out what your status is and make sure that you are registered to vote. Tomorrow, the window closes for everyone who's not registered. If you're not in a state that has same site on day, same day on-site voter registration. Tomorrow is the last day in many, many places. So much love to you, my dear, dear, dear brother. I'm beloved. I'm about to run to my next hour, but I want to give you all of my love. God bless you. I am what they call in the United States a PK, a preacher's kid. So I've got a soft spot in my heart for all men of God. My love to you. And I can't wait to have you on the show. Please. Oh, you got to unmute him, Ariel.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to be with you. And I want to tell you my story. We have today 7 million Israeli Jews, 7 million Palestinian. We need to be smart enough to let people to be reconciled, accept the dignity and the right of each. That's the most important right now. There's no way to go back. We cannot say to the Jews leave. We cannot say to the Palestinian leave. And Israel action is wrong and must stop for what they're doing to the Palestinians.
Well, that is the final word here. May God bless you, and thank you so much for all of your work. Thank you. Thank you for your example. And you have a home here. I want you to come back. My love to you.
I love you too.
My love with you, and my love with you, Ariel. My love with you, young Jonah. My sweetie, I have to be, as Africans, I'm your Aunt Santita. There it is. That's what happens when you get to be my age. I'm sending you so much love. My love goes with all of you and everybody. I will say this: let us keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. We're going to do that. We are going to get there. God has already won. Now we must do our portion. How about that? I love you, everybody. God bless you. See you in the next hour. Let's talk about the vote.